The void shimmered as the Confederation dreadnought Void Whisper materialized at the edge of Sol system, its dark hull bristling with weapons that had turned entire star systems to cosmic dust. Commander Zycthala's crystalline carapace reflected the bridge lights as she surveyed the tactical displays with predatory satisfaction. At 12 feet tall, with 4 muscular arms and mandibles that could crush steel, Zycthala was the embodiment of Confederation military might. She had personally overseen the subjugation of 17 worlds, each conquest adding another trophy to her collection. Her reptilian features bore the ritual scars of 1,000 battles, and her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Navigator Keth, initial survey of the target system," she commanded, her words causing lesser crew members to straighten with nervous attention. The insectoid navigator, his compound eyes processing multiple data streams simultaneously, manipulated the holographic controls with practiced efficiency. "Third planet from the star, Commander, designated as Earth in their primitive communications. Single large moon, abundant water, oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere. Inhabitants?" Zycthala's mandibles clicked with anticipation. "Bipedal, carbon-based life forms calling themselves humans. Current population approximately 8 billion. They demonstrate basic industrial capabilities, crude electromagnetic communications, primitive nuclear technology, chemical-based space propulsion." Keth's antennae twitched dismissively. No evidence of faster-than-light capability or energy weapons. Zycthala's 4 arms spread in a gesture of supreme confidence. "Another backward species that barely escaped their own gravity well. What's their military structure?" "Fragmented into numerous competing nation-states, constant territorial disputes, resource conflicts, ideological warfare. No unified planetary government or defense system." The navigator's report dripped with contempt. "They use kinetic projectile weapons and explosive devices. Technologically, they're at least 3 centuries behind Confederation standard." "Perfect," Zycthala purred, her scarred features twisting into what might have been a smile. "Divided, primitive, and isolated. The High Command will be pleased with such an easy acquisition." She gazed at the small blue world hanging in the cosmic darkness, completely unaware that she was looking at the most dangerous planet in the known galaxy. 3 weeks of surveillance had turned the bridge of the Void Whisper into a theater of mockery. The Confederation's finest warriors lounged at their stations, watching human activities with the casual amusement of apex predators observing prey animals stumbling through their daily routines. Science Officer Vextar, whose scaled purple hide bore the chemical burns of a dozen atmospheric warfare campaigns, gestured at the tactical display with obvious disdain. "Look at their so-called space program," he sneered, his forked tongue tasting the air with disgust. "Chemical rockets that take months to reach their own satellite. We could traverse their entire solar system in the time it takes them to achieve orbit." "Pathetic," agreed communications specialist Cathara, her 6 eyes independently tracking multiple human broadcast frequencies. "Their information networks are completely unencrypted. I've been monitoring their military communications for days. They discuss troop movements, weapon deployments, even classified research projects with laughable security protocols." Navigator Keth manipulated the holographic display, highlighting various human settlements across Earth's surface. "Observe their urban centers. Cramped, inefficient, built without any consideration for defensive architecture. A single orbital bombardment could eliminate millions of them simultaneously." Zycthala nodded approvingly from her command throne, her scarred mandibles clicking with satisfaction. "They're exactly what we expected, a fractured species too primitive to pose any meaningful resistance. Different languages prevent unified communication. Competing governments ensure political instability, and their religious divisions create additional internal conflict. Commander, Vextar continued, pulling up intercepted human entertainment broadcasts. They actually romanticize warfare in their fiction, while simultaneously being horrified by its reality. They lack the warrior mentality necessary for effective resistance. Excellent, Zakthala declared. However, before we transmit our conquest recommendations to High Command, I want a complete environmental assessment. The Confederation values thorough intelligence gathering. Environmental assessment? Cathara's eye stalks swiveled questioningly. Surely their planetary conditions are irrelevant to conquest planning. Standard protocol demands comprehensive atmospheric analysis, Zakthala replied firmly. We need to determine if our occupation forces will require environmental protection during the ground campaign. Begin deep scan procedures immediately. The atmospheric scanning array hummed to life with mechanical precision, its crystalline sensors extending from the Void Whisper's hull like the tendrils of some cosmic predator. The deep scan operation commenced at 0600 hours Earth time, penetrating the planet's gaseous envelope with technology sophisticated enough to detect individual molecular signatures across interstellar distances. Science Officer Vextar monitored the incoming data streams with practiced boredom, his clawed fingers dancing across holographic interfaces while multiple displays cascaded information around his workstation. Initial readings confirm standard Class M atmospheric composition, he reported in a monotone voice. Nitrogen-oxygen mixture, approximately 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, with trace amounts of argon, carbon dioxide, and various noble gases. Radiation levels? Commander Zakthala inquired from her command position, already mentally composing her conquest report for High Command. Within acceptable parameters for carbon-based life forms, magnetic field provides adequate protection from solar radiation, ozone layer intact. Vextar's scaled brow ridges furrowed slightly as additional data populated his screens. Temperature variations are moderate, seasonal cycles predictable, standard gravity well for a planet of this mass. Navigator Keth adjusted his compound eyes to focus on the scanning telemetry. Atmospheric density appears optimal for our respiratory systems. No toxic compounds detected that would require specialized filtration equipment. Excellent, Zakthala declared. Our ground forces will operate at maximum efficiency without environmental constraints. But as the scanning beam intensified, probing deeper into Earth's atmospheric chemistry with unprecedented precision, Vextar's routine expression began to shift. Warning indicators started flashing across his primary display, and his forked tongue flicked out nervously to taste the recycled air of the ship's bridge. "Commander," he said slowly, his voice carrying an unfamiliar note of uncertainty, "I'm detecting some irregularities in the atmospheric composition." Define irregularities? The oxygen concentration readings are fluctuating. My instruments are detecting higher levels than initially measured, and there are trace molecular signatures that don't correspond to any known atmospheric profile in our xenobiology databases. Zakthala's forearms tensed slightly. Equipment malfunction? Negative, Commander. All systems are operating within normal parameters. I'm requesting permission to initiate a comprehensive spectral analysis to resolve these discrepancies. The bridge atmosphere grew thick with tension as the comprehensive spectral analysis data flooded across the primary displays. What began as routine atmospheric assessment had transformed into something that defied every xenobiological principle the Confederation had established over millennia of galactic conquest. "By the void's edge," Vextar whispered, his scaled hands trembling as he manipulated the holographic controls. "Commander, you need to witness this immediately." The main tactical display erupted into a three-dimensional atmospheric model of Earth, but instead of the gentle blues and greens indicating a hospitable world, it blazed with warning colors, deep crimsons and pulsing oranges that screamed immediate danger to any Confederation personnel. "Impossible," Navigator Keth stammered, his compound eyes reflecting the ominous display. "Run the analysis again. Check for equipment malfunction, solar interference, anything that could explain these readings." "I've executed the analysis protocol 23 times across multiple sensor arrays," Vextar replied, his voice cracking with disbelief. "All results are identical." "Commander, Earth's atmospheric composition contains 20.946% oxygen." The bridge erupted in horrified gasps and clicking mandibles. Communication specialist Kithara's 6 eyes widened in terror as she processed the implications. 21% oxygen? That's a death sentence for any known species. Commander Zikthala's 4 arms gripped her command throne as the revelation struck her like a physical blow. In her 12 centuries of military service, she had never encountered atmospheric conditions so hostile to life as they knew it. "Atmospheric pressure at sea level measures 14.7 pounds per square inch," Vextar continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "Gravitational force is 9.8 meters per second squared." "And, Commander," he paused, as if afraid to voice the next words. "The background radiation levels are registering at 2.4 millisieverts annually." The crew stared at the display in stunned silence. Every assumption they had made about human weakness was crumbling before their eyes. "How do they survive?" Kithara asked, her voice filled with existential dread. "Those conditions would kill our finest warriors within hours." "They don't just survive," Zicthala realized, her voice hollow with understanding. "They thrive in it." Commander Zicthala stood before the holographic display like a warrior facing her own mortality, her 4 arms trembling as the full scope of the revelation carved itself into her consciousness. The peaceful blue world below them wasn't a garden paradise inhabited by weaklings. It was a hellscape that would exterminate most known life forms within minutes of exposure. "Display comparative atmospheric analysis," she ordered, her voice tight with barely controlled terror. "Show me how Earth compares to every known inhabited world in our databases." The holographic array shifted, presenting Earth's atmospheric composition alongside the homeworlds of various Confederation species. The contrast was absolutely staggering, painting a picture that redefined their understanding of survivability. Science Officer Vextar's clawed fingers moved across his console with nervous precision. "The Zeltharian homeworld maintains 8.3% oxygen content," he read from the cascading data. "The Keth Dominion worlds average 11.7%. Even the warrior caste Brextal, who we've always considered the most physically robust species in the entire galaxy, evolved on worlds with atmospheric oxygen levels never exceeding 14.2%. "And the humans?" Zicthala asked, though she already knew the answer would haunt her dreams. 21% oxygen. They're breathing an atmosphere so volatile that a single electrical discharge could trigger spontaneous combustion across entire continents. Their homeworld is essentially a massive incendiary device. Navigator Keth's compound eyes processed the data with growing horror. "That explains their propulsion technology. They don't use controlled explosions because they're primitive. They use them because they've mastered living in an environment where everything burns." Communications specialist Kethara manipulated additional displays, her 6 eyes independently tracking multiple data streams. "The gravitational force is 1.7 times stronger than our optimal combat conditions. The atmospheric pressure would crush a Zeltharian's respiratory system within hours. And the background radiation exposure?" She paused, her voice dropping to a whisper of existential dread. The radiation levels on their homeworld exceed what we classify as safe exposure limits for our most elite military personnel. They're living in conditions that would kill our hardiest troops, and they consider it perfectly normal. The implication struck the bridge crew like a cascade of falling dominoes. For the first time in her illustrious military career spanning 12 centuries of conquest, Commander Zykthala felt the cold touch of genuine, paralyzing fear coursing through her crystalline nervous system. She had personally orchestrated the subjugation of 17 worlds, commanded fleets that had reduced entire star systems to cosmic debris, and earned her position through ruthless tactical brilliance that had become legendary throughout the Confederation. But the data streaming before her suggested that everything she thought she knew about warfare, strength, and survival was catastrophically wrong. "Display comprehensive human physiological analysis," she commanded, her voice steady despite the existential terror growing in her chest like a malignant tumor. The holographic array shifted to reveal human anatomy in clinical, terrifying detail. What they observed made their previous assumptions seem not just naive, but laughably ignorant of the universe's true predators. Science Officer Vextar manipulated the display with trembling claws, highlighting various physiological systems. "Observe their skeletal structure," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Bone density is approximately 2.8 times greater than ours. Their muscle fiber composition is engineered for explosive power rather than endurance. And their cardiovascular system. It's a high-performance combat engine," Navigator Keth finished, his compound eyes processing the implications with growing dread. "Designed to deliver massive quantities of oxygenated blood to muscles operating under extreme atmospheric pressure." Communications specialist Kethara accessed additional biological databases, her 6 eyes tracking multiple data streams simultaneously. "They're not merely adapted to their environment, they're perfectly optimized killing machines. Every human we've observed through our surveillance is essentially a living weapon forged by evolutionary pressures that would annihilate us." The crew watched in horrified silence as the implications crystallized. The humans they had dismissed as primitive weren't using basic technology because they were backwards. They were using it because they possessed such overwhelming physical capabilities that they didn't require the advanced technological crutches other species needed just to survive. "Their kinetic weapons," Vextar said slowly, his scaled hide pale with realization. "In their atmospheric conditions, wielded by their enhanced physiology, would be absolutely devastating," Zykthala confirmed, her voice hollow with newfound understanding. The emergency transmission to Confederation High Command went out at 0347 hours, ship time, encoded with the highest security protocols available to military intelligence. Commander Zykthala sat alone in her private quarters, her 4 hands trembling as she composed what would become the most important and terrifying military intelligence report in galactic history. "High Command, this is Commander Zykthala aboard the reconnaissance vessel Void Whisper. I am filing an immediate and urgent revision to our assessment of the Sol 3 species, designation human. Previous classification of primitive species suitable for standard subjugation protocols is hereby permanently rescinded." She paused, gazing out through the reinforced viewport at the blue world that had revealed its horrifying secrets, fundamentally altering her understanding of what constituted strength in the universe. Humans are not a primitive species. They are an apex warrior race so evolutionarily advanced that they have weaponized their own planetary environment. Sol 3 is not a garden world suitable for colonization. It is a high-intensity training ground that would systematically eliminate our finest soldiers. The humans we have observed are not divided and technologically inferior. They are constantly testing themselves against the most hostile atmospheric conditions in known space.
The report continued for several more minutes, detailing every aspect of their discoveries with scientific precision. Atmospheric composition, gravitational forces, radiation exposure levels, physiological adaptations, each revelation more terrifying than the last. When transmission was complete, Zicthalis sent it with maximum priority encryption, knowing it would reach the highest levels of Confederation command within hours. 3 days later, the response arrived from High Command. Recommendation accepted immediately. Sol 3 system hereby classified as Level 9 existential threat. All approach vectors permanently prohibited. Suggest immediate diplomatic contact to explore alliance possibilities rather than conquest scenarios. 6 months later, when the first human diplomatic delegation arrived at Confederation capital aboard a vessel powered by controlled explosions, the assembled alien dignitaries could barely contain their mixture of terror and awe. Ambassador Sarah Chen, a former Earth military specialist, removed her environmental helmet during the opening ceremony, breathing their carefully balanced artificial atmosphere without apparent difficulty. "Thank you," she said simply. "We're honored to meet our galactic neighbors." What the aliens didn't realize was that humans had detected their surveillance within hours of arrival, choosing to let them observe and draw their own conclusions about humanity's true nature.